Our next speaker is Tony Rich. Tony is an industrial hygienist, photographic historian, and an ADAO Prevention Advisory Board member. He has quite the collection as it relates to asbestos products, books. It's such a variety, and he's here to talk about it with Linda Reinstein.
Thank you, Ellen. Tony, most of all, thank you for joining us because we've never had an opportunity to talk about your collection around our conference. And you have driven hundreds and thousands of miles, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of miles to and from conferences to share your extensive collection. So share with our viewing audience a little bit about you. How did you come up with this collection and what does it mean to you?
Well, thank you, Ellen and Linda and ADAO for this opportunity to participate in today's Art Advocacy and Action Festival. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm an asbestos inspector and asbestos professional. In the last 30 years, I've essentially had personal access to very large variety of asbestos materials during the course of performing inspections. I see firsthand the extensive use of asbestos in so many parts of civilization and in our country. Basically a front row, unique perspective towards answering the questions, what does asbestos look like? And where is it? After over a century and counting, industry and continues to add millions of tons of asbestos products and materials into our everyday places and into our everyday lives. Places ranging from high-rises to homes, factories to farms, schools and institutions, places of worship, and throughout our nation's infrastructure. In my experience, legacy asbestos is seemingly everywhere. In an effort to increase awareness and knowledge about asbestos, I've created a collection of many materials and resources which help to contribute learning more about overall asbestos safety. At last count, I believe there's 12,000 related asbestos items. Some of these resources include photo documenting hazardous conditions and a wide variety of different asbestos materials, products, and applications. Many of these photos have been featured in gallery exhibits, university textbooks, video documentaries, and ADAO's popular Asbestos See for Yourself awareness campaign, also in museums, just to name a few. Another important way of sharing the information has been through providing displays of ACM actual materials found, which adds a historical and tangible aspect to the discussion about asbestos. A few of these products are here on safe display at our conference venue. Items range from mineral specimens to building materials to asbestos snow to Kent Micronite asbestos filtered cigarette, children's makeup, and countless manufacturers' advertisements, industrial literature, and catalogs. I'd like to touch on just briefly on a small selection of these items, including starting with a few of the asbestos manuals and catalogs from industry, which collectively represent thousands of different products and applications. Anyone that does any type of research or just basic fact finding about asbestos, you hear the term 3,000 asbestos products. On the table here are 15 different books and catalogs that represent over that number, and in my collection I have a wall full of these types of manuals. I'm here to say that 3,000 is a number it's far exceeded. So legacy asbestos is much more prevalent in society. So there's so much asbestos out there that the point here is there's only a handful of materials that we can look at, such as a document here, like a catalog that tells you where to find it, what it is, where it's installed, And it's just one catalog of many.
Tell us about some of the actual products that you have, because your library of books and manuals is terrific. I'm staring at something that I know many people have seen online because they follow us, but let's talk about those two hard items.
I recall a time before I started my work that I had no knowledge about asbestos. And in my research, I found that asbestos was in cigarettes. So I did the research, found the cigarettes, took it to the lab, and there it was. Hard to believe. Another product includes asbestos snow. These are found in various places such as antique stores, online marketplaces, for sale and for use. It clearly states on the box asbestos, but it's definitely not recommended to use these, even though the directions say sprinkle it on the trees, sprinkle it on your village scene, sprinkle it on the branches of your tree. Don't do that.
Good tip. You can actually see the asbestos fibers in the kitchen towels that say 20% asbestos. Tony, if we could get a cameraman to just take a look against the wall where Tony has his collection. And as Tony said, this is just a small sampling, but it takes a lot of time, talent, and dollars to to obviously collect these items. And you have everything from comics to buttons to, I see a big piece of serpentine over there with asbestos. So for our conference attendees, I encourage and invite you to walk through this and have a conversation with Tony, because you will really learn. Tony, from the time that you spent collecting as an industrial hygienist, you go onto eBay, I know, and other sources to buy things, but you are actually in the field as an industrial hygienist, not to give away content from your job, but you must oftentimes see some of this so-called, in my vocabulary, stuff in homes and garages. Tell us a little bit about how do you connect this wall of items to our everyday world today?
My current profession, my job at my current employer, we are inspecting tens of thousands of structures that are abandoned throughout the metropolitan area. We find routinely many of these products on shelves that are still being used, and we see them applied and installed within the homes and within the structures. It's so routine that over 90% of all the structures that I personally inspect contain some form of asbestos, whether it's in a product that's still being stored or installed within the home or the building.
Yeah, you're an expert that can really give us the background. I was looking on the packaging to see if these carousel dish towels had a date. It looks like a 1950s vintage, but you know that. So they've known for over 100 years that exposure can cause suffering, disease, and death. So how and why, we won't be able to answer in this conference. I see a very interesting box down below. When we describe at our conferences asbestos, what is it, where is it, what do I do, we call that session 3. This year we're actually going to be talking about legacy asbestos. We want to not just talk about the 6 fiber types and the disease that we know it causes. We want to make a practical connection between homes, schools, and buildings so people can better prevent exposure to eliminate disease. In one of our bills, or actually since the last 2 iterations, we have written in to ban the 6 fibers using the AHERA definition, but also the libby-amphibole. Tell us a little bit about what's in your hand. Why is that important?
This is an actual advertising artifact from a company that was once called Zonalite, which was eventually acquired by W.R. Grace, and it contains a material called vermiculite, and it's from an area of Montana called Libby, and it's been established that that particular geological site also was started out as an asbestos mine. They abandoned that because of the quality of the asbestos was not acceptable, but they found this other miracle mineral called vermiculite, and it had proven to have a lot of uses for industry. The problem is the asbestos is mixed with the vermiculite. It's contaminated. And there's been many studies on vermiculite. We've had, I think, David McCumber, who's written books with Andrew Schneider, well-known book, who says that much of this material he's found in their research was in 15 to 30 million properties. We routinely find these in properties that we inspect today. It's an ongoing problem, not only in loose fill vermiculite in attics, but in my research, the USGS reports that up to a third of the material is also in masonry fill, so it's within wall cavities and blocks. Another percentage of that historical use of vermiculite from Libby has also been as plaster aggregates, so it could be in the plasters in homes, and also in older gardening products.
Well, that's quite a terrifying box of zonalite insulation. They in Georgia, and Dr. Lemon, who's in the audience, and Sue-Ann have taken me, zonalite actually was so prevalent, that name and W.R. Grace and all the rest, it was railed all over the United States, and there's actually a former popping facility, processing plant, where they actually used to use heat and expand it. And it's very lightweight, and it appeared to be the perfect mineral, which clearly it's not. Your collection helps to drive home education and awareness. And I can't thank you enough for what you do for ADAO and general education. Your collection is huge, and driving home your photographs tomorrow for your session 3 about what is it, where is it, what do I do? People need to understand what they do, and also find industrial hygienists who are trained and qualified to go in and do testing and abatement, because it's cheaper to do it wrong than to do it right, and that is a death trap. One last thing, Tony's also been an expert around environmental sites, and I'll make sure that our keynote speaker, David Borax, has that study that we did. We actually, separate from your trip, I went with Marilyn and Minto, we walked around a Superfund site, and literally on the ground, just stepping over, I picked up 4 samples of debris, and 2 out of 4 were contaminated with, I think, 25% chrysotile.
That's right.
And so you've allowed us to connect the debris to the science to the policy. So thank you for all you do. What do you want your viewers to know about this collection? And if they want to find more, I know you have a website, but there's nothing like seeing it in person. Where do you want people to go to see more about your collection?
Many of the items are also on, as Linda mentioned, the website. If it's okay to mention, asbestorama.com. Thousands of photos there that represent so many materials that help you identify and recognize these types of materials, such as vermiculite. You can see what it looks like. I've met so many homeowners and folks in buildings that had no idea, that they were working around this type of material until they might have recognized it on the website or through some form of awareness. So that's the I think the bottom line is to be able to recognize hazards and prevent exposure.
And find the right people to do the right job.
Right.